Hello. Hey guys. Welcome Simon to the show. Hey Simon.
Hey guys, nice to see
Hello.
you finally.
Yes. So yeah, I was gonna say, the next interview that we're gonna be doing is gonna be with David, who's been on here. But Simon is the first time we're talking. So the past couple interviews have all been people who I've talked with here on the channel for the first time. Simon
Yep,
among them. So
yeah,
glad to finally have you on.
it's my
Uh,
pleasure.
and we're going to talk a whole bunch about um, your GBWC experience and everything, just modeling experience. Again, since it's our first time kind of doing an interview here on the channel, just for people who are anybody who's like unfamiliar with your work, we'll talk about some of your previous experience and other
Sure.
non-Gunpla work as well, all
Yep.
kinds of stuff to give people kind of a little bit more experience with you and your work. And then, yeah, GBWC. So Simon was the 2023 Canada representative and then went on to win the championship. What's the title for the winner technically?
Uh, World champion, I guess.
World champion. Yeah, I guess that's what it is,
That's
right?
probably it. Yep.
We were talking about that. I mean, I think you saw with Ryan and I, we were thinking, wait, what's the official title? So anyway, I think I liked King Champion better. I think that's pretty good.
That's a good one. Yep.
World champion's good, but world champion. So, I mean, first off, just congratulations again. Uh,
Thank you.
Pretty awesome, amazing. First North American champion
Yeah.
too.
Super pumped. Yep.
It's
First
amazing.
time.
So,
Yep.
and not your first time being there in the finals either.
That's right. Right. So
We'll talk all about that. But I'll
okay.
let you kind of introduce yourself a little bit here, and maybe let people know anything that they should know
Sure.
about you and kind of how you got into modeling. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, obviously, I'm Simon Lam. I've been building model for quite a while now because, well, I was born in Hong Kong. So basically, it's like any other kids from that generation. We all grew up with Gundam because
Mhm.
the animation was showing on the TV. So we all fell in love. So anyone I know in my generation, we all built Gunpla, basically. And we
Mhm.
kind of grew up with them. But myself, I did put it down for quite a while there because since I came to Canada for the
Mhm.
first 20 some odd years, I didn't really do anything. One of the
Mhm.
reason being is that at that time you can't really get any parts, any tools for it. So when you're an actual modeler, if you know that you're not going to do it right, you're not going to do it justice, may as well not do it kind of thing.
Mhm.
So it all started back in 2017 when I took a trip with my wife to Japan again. And I brought back my airbrushes, my compressor, and I was all pumped to go again. And only right after I find out, where after I come back, I find out that they actually have GBWC for the first time in Canada in 2017. And I
Mhm.
go, you know what? Why not give it a shot? And it was kind of rushed though, because we only had like about 3 months when we find out there's a GBWC in Canada and the deadline and managed to come up with a little small project. And I was lucky enough that I went through and haven't stopped building ever since then. And here I am.
Mhm. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. That yeah, I mean, number one, you had just like a short window, right, from when it was
Yep.
announced it was going to even going to be
Yep.
available, and that you were able to put something together in that time. We can take a look at that. You have some,
Sure.
sorry, something in my eye. We'll take a look at some of that since we're on the topic. Past the GBWC, let me put up on the screen here for us. Um, but So your first experience into any kind of modeling was Gunpla. You didn't start off with like something different, right?
The first model I ever bought was a Zagu 1. So
Mm.
that's when there was no gray to it. I still remember the same box. Um, and then after that, I did get into like tank models, little military stuff. And I like to build a bit of everything, like automobiles, tank, and everything. Because there's just so many of them. They're so accessible in Hong Kong back in the days.
Mm.
So we can never run out of stuff to build back then.
Mm. What would you say? I mean, this is we'll talk some more about this, but just kind of real quick, what would you say is your favorite? I mean, is Gunpla your favorite thing to work on? Because I know you work on a lot of different stuff. Do you have a favorite?
I had to say Gunpla is my favorite.
Mm.
Yes, because the whole reason why I started building models because the animation is on TV.
Sure.
It's like a lot of builders here in North America, they started watching Wing Gundam back then, and that's
Hmm.
how they started. So the same idea. I'm
Yeah.
just a lot older.
Sure. So here's this photo. This is from in Japan there at the finals
Oh
with
yeah.
your
Yep.
entry and your
That's
family.
right.
Very
Yeah.
nice. I'm
Yeah.
sure you feel nostalgic, just like I do, looking at kids, photos of your kids when they're much younger.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The
Yeah.
funny thing is that year, like, well, we didn't expect anything because we
Mm,
really don't have time to do anything that year. But that's when I find out on the, let's say, the world stage, things
mm,
are so much bigger.
mm,
So the allowance is 50 by 50 by 50, right? So,
mm,
but then we only have 3 months, so we can't really come up with something big. And then we had to think about how am I going to take it to Japan if I actually got through, right? So
mm-hmm.
we came with something a medium size. But then when actually at the venue, like
Mm,
mine was like a super featherweight entry with all the super heavyweight competitors. So it's funny because they actually give everyone 2 hours to set up the build. And I
mm-hmm.
was like, well, I really only need 2 minutes. So what am I going to do? Right. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was a fun experience. Unfortunately, yeah, I did come in last on that year. And that was actually what triggered me to keep building. I was because I was wondering like if I have enough time, what could have happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Sure.
yeah, it was a nice time. It was a good surprise back then. Yeah.
I think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but fair to say that I'm sure you were pleased with the experience despite coming in last.
Yeah. Well, we expected it anyway. So
Well, I mean, still, I remember this entry. I really like it. I mean, I think you did, I mean, a really cool job with this for sure. And especially like you said, for such a short time, I mean, like
yeah.
where you didn't really have, you weren't even, I mean, before you knew that it was available for Canada, were you thinking like of, oh, this would be a cool idea for something to do for GBWC? For like now, you know, it's just something that comes every year. So you have basically unlimited time to just like think of a cool idea. And this one, you had to
Yeah.
come up with the entire concept and do the kit and everything.
No. I had no clue what this was. Well, I bought this kit for a birthday present.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the day I find out that the shop owner, it was Bowen, who told me, oh, well, there's GBWC for Canada. I'm like, really? They never had that before. It was always North America. And they go,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's for this year. You should try it. I go, okay, I'll give it a shot. And then we start planning. And I know I only have 3 months, so you can't really do something really amazing. But at the same time, like I'm old school, right? So I'm UC 100% all the time. So for me to build, I know I can't come up with a grand idea. So I try to make something that kind of makes sense in the universe of Gunpla. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like what something that might actually happen, and that's how I came up with this idea back then. So
Mm-hmm.
so it was like as if what if Johnny actually got a hold of GPO2 and the nuclear weapon? What could have happened? And that's
Mm-hmm.
how this came about. And I was lucky enough that it actually came through at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, surely, like you said, it inspired you to work more on future pieces, and you know, I'm sure just like the whole experience of, like I said, just going over to Japan and being there at the finals, I'm sure was just very inspirational.
Oh,
No
it's
doubt.
mind blowing
Yeah.
because we don't know what to expect back then. So everything is
Mhm.
exciting for me.
Yeah, there was certainly not as much. I mean, even still now, I kind of don't feel that there's as much coverage. Maybe it's just like here on this side of the world, there's not
Hmm.
really enough coverage of the events, like generally, or like marketing or promotion of the event. I feel like Bandai could do more there. But
Hmm.
yeah, especially at that time, I mean, unless you were like pretty well deep into the hobby, you probably didn't really know all that much about it, you know?
Right.
But there's some other stuff here too. Which one do you want to look at
Hmm.
first? We have your
Well,
Dom entry
yeah,
here.
this is GBC, so this is not GBWC.
Mm,
That's when COVID hits everybody, and
mm,
so there's no more in-person competition anymore.
mm,
But then, well, what else are we gonna do when there's COVID? Well, we just keep building, right? So
yeah.
we have to enter something. Um, It's basically the same idea as the first one that I try to create something, a what if situation with
Mm,
that's within the Gundam universe. What if Rambert didn't die
mm,
uh, from the 1 year wall? And could he have get a hold of the dome tropin? You know,
mm,
if he does, what would it looks like? And that's how this came about. I think this came second in GBC. Yeah, so this one didn't win at all. Yeah.
mm. Um, yeah, this one I think is maybe something I want to talk some more about your painting style. I
Hmm.
think with this one compared to the other one, I mean, we can start to see, and especially like going from that until your 2023 entry where it was all
Right.
hand painted, correct?
Right. Yeah. Even this one is 100% hand painted because
Okay. Mm.
there wasn't a progress to go from using an airbrush to hand painting. It was like a one shot build that I have to swap overnight because
Hmm.
my wife basically say you're not airbrushing at home anymore. So
Okay.
yeah, as
Yep.
a little boy, yeah, it was a couple of years old back then. It was like, okay, paint can't be good for him.
Hmm.
So I got banned from using the airbrush, and I go, well, what else can I do? I still want to paint, right?
Hmm.
So I started picking up a paintbrush and start working through it, and this is how it came about. Um, one thing interesting about this is because when it comes to the design aspect, like I don't want to do something that's typical, like the clean build, the very complicated detailing stuff. So
Hmm.
I try to come up with something that's more like a fantasy thing. So you see that little green stuff in the middle,
Yep.
the stuff and the bell and stuff, the feet, they all tied in together as if it's kind of the same type of design element that
Yep.
tied the whole build together.
Hmm.
Yeah. So that was the whole idea for doing this, and also that I just started doing hand painting. So I did a couple of free hand painting on the shoulder and all that.
Hmm.
So those are very fun stuff.
Yeah. 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 And yeah, I mean, you can certainly see. Did you? You didn't mention this in like your modeling experience, but do you have any experience like painting miniatures? I mean, because there's certainly a lot of, miniature painting techniques there, or is that
Right,
something that you just once you decided that you were going to be hand painting, you're like, well, I better look
right.
into how are
Hmm.
miniatures painted?
Well, I wouldn't say I have no experience. I didn't start from scratch. I always like drawing myself.
Mm,
And I had experience. I had exposure to military building kits before.
mm,
Back in the 80s, 90s for military kits, it was always hand painting. And we're not
mm,
using. We don't have acrylic paint back then either. So we were doing a Lemo, we're doing lacquer paint hand painting,
mm,
but not to this level of detail.
mm,
So a lot of time when it comes to military, like we try to create like a randomness that we'll
yeah.
see in reality in real life. So is we're not looking for the perfectly smooth surface, smooth
Mm,
finish.
mm,
That would actually work when we're with the medium like a lacquer or enamel paint. But
mm,
when it comes to doing Gunpla, because they're so big,
mm,
that a lot of time it wouldn't make sense if there's too much variation between the tone and all that.
mm,
So that's when I actually start looking into how to paint miniatures like Warhammer and stuff.
mm,
And once I started, I kind of got into a rabbit hole that I can't pull myself out of. And
mm.
yeah, I just keep doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's really interesting to talk about the scale. How,
Mhm.
a lot of people, it's kind of interesting. You hear from a lot of different people about how, applicable certain techniques are from military modeling to Gunpla or from miniature modeling to Gunpla. They both are, but in different ways, right?
Mhm.
And for different
Yep.
finishes, different
Yep.
techniques. Yeah,
Yep.
for a finish like this, where you're getting that sort of like weathered, sort of
Mhm.
blotchy finish, right? It's meant to
Yep.
look like that.
Yep.
Uh, yeah, I mean, it looks really nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, scale makes a huge difference when it comes to
mm,
painting a model, and the perspective too. Because if you look into miniature painting, a lot of time they would promote like a forced perspective that you
mm,
are supposed to look at a model in one directions, in one
mm,
perspective, and that's what they aim and focus on making that one view that looks
mm,
perfect. But
mm,
for us, because we're dealing with the gunpowder that's like 20 meters, 30 meters tall,
mm,
usually we look at it built at 360 degrees. So it's kind of like military build. So you cannot just put all the effort into just one view
mm,
and ignore the others. So there's difference between the two. So the approach would be different even when you're painting because of that.
mm. Yeah, like that and the lighting too, right? I mean,
Hmm.
that's with miniatures, you're painting them with usually like a light source or multiple light sources
Yep.
in mind. Where yeah, again, with something that size, that scale, it's less of a consideration.
Yeah.
You can always
Absolutely.
be
Yep.
stylistic about it though, and I mean, like this one is certainly like somewhat stylistic, but
Hmm.
not to the extent. We have your Zagok in here as well. This one,
Yep. Yep.
this
That's
one,
2022. That's last year. Yep.
this one, year before last. So this one was you were the Canadian winner that year as well. Here it is with the trophy.
That's right. Yep. Yep.
Uh,
So
Go ahead.
this, this was interesting because it started off with an illustration. So there is
Mhm.
this illustrator from Japan. If I'm not mistaken, his Tosashi, that's his name, and he always does illustration for magazines, not necessarily Gunpla, all kinds of magazines, and he has his own style. That
Mm,
when he does a drawing, he rarely use a very solid hard edges. Everything
mm,
seems to be curvy. It seems organic,
mhm,
and among builders, we all love his design, and it was like it was almost a challenge to be able to recreate something that he designed, because something that looks good on 2D don't necessarily translate to 3D nicely, and
mhm,
sometimes it simply that just doesn't make sense when you try
mhm,
to make it turn into 3D. So it's always
mhm,
been a challenging thing to actually create one of his design, and that was the whole purpose. That's how it all started.
mhm,
And yeah, so as you can see here, I have to print out all his design and try to reference it and try to go from this is the original XG it's got,
mhm,
and try to modify it to look similar to the design. And I end up using a lot of parts from RG and all the different stuff just to make it happen. Because
mhm,
the waist bottom up, the waist design is completely different than original XG. So
mhm. Yeah. And this is all in 144 scale then too, yeah.
yep, yep.
Mhm,
Yeah, it's lucky I got access to an algae, because you can actually take the frame from the algae and use it for the legs and the limbs, and
mhm,
that helped a lot with this process.
mhm. Yeah. What else did you find? I guess, obviously we're just recreating the shapes and everything, as
Yep.
close as you could to the illustration. Was there any other particular challenges you faced with this build?
When I did this, the whole purpose is to just create the illustration, right?
Mm,
So I wasn't thinking about a diorama or lightning or what would I
mm,
put it on. But then when I decided to enter GBWC with this, I was like, yeah, this is kind of too plain to just create a
mm,
build just because.
mm,
So I want to do a story, a diorama just for it. And then I got stuck because when I painted, I didn't have that in mind.
mm,
So what kind of diorama can I possibly create for this?
mm,
And I came up with the decision to do an underwater thing, because
mhm,
again, this goes back to miniature, because there's a lot of miniatures built that you see that they have a backdrop.
mhm,
So so
mhm,
I kind of take that idea and use it here. So with a backdrop, you're kind of forcing your perspective on a certain angle here. So you can see this is the premium view angle,
mhm,
and to try to create the idea that the feel that is it's underwater.
mhm,
Then I go, well, obviously the wedding is not how it should be when it's underwater.
mhm.
But to create that fake illusion, then I add the little scuba diver in,
Yep.
just to get the viewer and see, oh, okay, this is what he's trying to do. That is actually underwater kind of thing,
Mhm.
and it worked out really well. So I'm quite happy with this.
Yeah, no, I just like as you were kind of explaining about that, I figured, yeah, you're talking about how you're using the kind of three-dimensional elements. So you have like the front, middle, and back, right?
Hmm.
Kind of with these different elements with the scuba divers, which, are when you look at the piece as a whole, come back up to this photo, and that's obviously not going to be the first thing that catches your eye. You're going to be looking at
That's
this
right.
too, but it does, like, as you're looking at it further, it does give you that depth of the scene there for sure. And so the background is all hand painted there as well too. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Mm,
Ever since the dome, everything has been fully hand painted since then.
mm, 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 mm. And even this kind of insignia up here too, which is quite impressive.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of designed it myself, so that was fun.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if you remember the one in the pocket,
Mhm.
the movie, the OEA back then. They had the
Mhm.
Cyclops team, right? So I'm thinking, so what would be an emblem for a team that's amphibian MS, just like a Cyclops team with the
Mhm.
camphor and all that, and that's how it came up. That's what I came up with.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. How long would you say this one, like, I guess, since you built it originally not planning on making it for GBWC, I mean,
Hmm.
you maybe probably didn't even have a timeline in mind when you were first working on it. But I mean, then once you decided you had to, or that you wanted to include it for GBWC, did that put you in a bit of like a time rush? What was your ultimate like length that you spent on
Uh,
this one?
Let me think. I think this build, this yacht itself took approximately 4 to 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then the diorama was done really relatively quickly. So that was like a month's time that I
Mm-hmm.
had to create a diorama. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so overall, it took about 8 months altogether, I guess.
At that time, did you think like, all right, now that I've decided that I'm entering in GBWC and I've got
Mhm.
it all finished up now, did you expect to win again, or what was your
Uh,
expectation? How did you
I
think it was
was
going to go?
I was pretty happy with this build, so I was kind of confident, and
Mm-hmm.
especially for that year. The reason why is because this is online.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, what I've learned from my first entry is that size do matter when it comes to GBWC. So you want something that has really a good presence. That is, because when you go to the final stage, they actually reveal your model in a display case that they walk around 360, right? So you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna have something for you to show in every corner.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if your build is small, that you kind of lack that presence, that intimidation, right? So, but if it's an online, I can zoom into my picture. I can create that it looks big on
Mm-hmm.
photo, and
Yeah,
and that's a completely different approach
I
when it
like
comes to
this.
an in-person competition.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you can take that to your advantage. Some people see that as a disadvantage because maybe they don't have the necessary like photography skill.
Mm-hmm.
But then if it's a competition, you try to do everything we can to maximize your advantage, right? So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah, it's unfortunate because online competition does require a slightly different set of skill set to
Mm-hmm.
to excel.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So I mean, I guess that's another thing that you didn't really plan for when you were planning when you were working on the build originally. You weren't
Right.
necessarily, thinking that that's what you're going to ultimately end up doing with it.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so this year, so that year, I guess, you placed a little bit better than last place, which was good.
I guess I can only be better, right?
Yeah.
That's like Kevin
Uh,
last the first time. Yeah. But the
that
funny
was.
story is, if you look at this build, like these are the pictures that they end up using without the diorama. Because
Mm,
when you submit 10 pictures,
hmm.
10 with front, back, top, down, and then there's like there's the codec shot that you want to present.
Yeah.
And I put that at the end with the diorama, and somehow they picked the one without the diorama, which I don't understand why. So
Interesting.
I don't know if it was actually judged with or without the diorama. That was always a question for me.
Uh,
Yeah.
and nobody ever said so, or you didn't ask, basically.
No, not really. I do remember when they did the online final. I think Meiji Kawaguchi did mention that it would be nicer if there's a sense of underwater or like the
Mm,
water's moving. There's like he did mention something about the
mm.
diorama, but I was like, hey, wait, I thought I did all that he actually mentioned. So I don't
Well,
know. It's good enough, you know. It
yeah.
did come true for Canada, so that's good enough for me.
Yeah. And like you said, that's the kind of thing that maybe, had you originally planned on making this as a diorama, you could have planned
Hmm.
for it better. But I mean,
Yep.
like working with the model that you were already happy with, that was the challenge that you faced for that. All right. There you are
Oh, that's
with
back
that
to the
one.
dome.
Yeah, there's that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's take off of GBWC for a moment
Mhm.
because I do want to hear before we talk about your winning entry this past year, some of your other modeling experience. So I know that you've got some other different photos we can take a look at here. Some military
Mhm.
models, also some like garage kit or like character figures
Yep.
as well. I guess how did you let's take a look at the military stuff here first, just maybe the easiest one to answer. But how did you find yourself getting into some other different types of modeling?
Uh, I would say, okay, so the whole purpose for me dipping into all different type of modeling is back in 2017. So when I decided I want to compete in GWC, one thing that we always ask ourselves, so the Japanese has at least 20, 30 years ahead of us when it comes
Mm,
to the skills, the way the mod, they had a lot more experience than we do. So how
mm,
do we come through uh, differently?
mm,
So if I do what they do, then I'm going to end up similar or just as good, but not better than them, right?
Mm,
So I kind of have to find other ways to make my build a little bit more unique than the other ones.
mm,
And one thing that actually caught my attention is, I don't know if you remember Paint Pusher Win.
mm,
He
yeah,
had a lot of trophies in GBWC. And if
yeah.
you look at his entries, a lot of them are kind of he actually used miniature approach when it
Mm-hmm,
comes to his build, and
yep.
he never used an airbrushes.
Mm-hmm,
So I was like, hey, that's something we can explore and see. Maybe we can bring stuff from the other rind into Gunpla building and see if that would make me stand out from the crowd, right?
mm,
So I started dabbling into other stuff like military, how to do realistic painting, and then figure painting. Because
mm,
figure painting, there's two different approaches. Because if you
mm,
look at the Eastern world, they would do a more realistic approach. They like to treat it like a military build that I wanted to look as real as possible.
mm,
And then if you look at the European painters, they come up with more like an illustration approach that I'm
mm,
looking at the illustration, a movie poster kind of
mm,
design, and I wanted to try both. So
mm,
I was trying a lot of different stuff. So you can see there's a marquee there. That's
yeah,
actually a gachapon.
yep.
So
Mm,
the detail on the gachapon are not the greatest, so I have to do a
mm,
lot of modification there, and which I use a lot of military parts from the 145 scale figures and all that. So the face is completely a soldier from a
mm,
tank model,
mm,
um, and you try to make that like really want out outfit, and that worked really well for at Marquee stuff.
mm, mm. Yeah.
Yeah,
There's this one as well. That's what's the scale on that one?
this is
4?
144. It's
Yeah.
144. It's actually resin. I
Okay.
remember. I forgot how I got it. It's actually a resin kit, and it was
Mm-hmm,
really small.
mm-hmm.
Originally, I was gonna use this one as part of the diorama for the jock,
Ah,
but then I decided to switch to underwater scene, so this one was just left there.
mm. It's a very interesting kind of what if situation. What if you hadn't gone underwater and had it above ground? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think that would have? I mean, do you think that would have affected the result at all? I mean, I feel like just based on the kit itself, you like you said, you felt pretty confident in the kit that kind of despite the diorama, you probably would have done well. But
Yeah, well, back then you look at GWC, they focus on the kit itself, right?
mm,
Because that's what we always know. Because they always say that the diorama doesn't matter that much.
mm,
And if you do a really good job, you might add points to it, but then you don't necessarily have to have it, which
mm,
is a lie anyway.
mm,
They always
mm,
want one. Yeah, they
yeah,
always want some kind of story instead of just a static diorama,
mm,
a base. Um, but I was more focused on the kit itself and not so much on the diorama back then,
mm,
until I get to the one that was this year.
mm. Yeah. I can see that definitely that there
Mm.
was, obviously with this one this year. I'm sorry, I'm pulling up the different photos here. But there was obviously, yeah, a lot more attention paid to just kind of the scene overall with
Hmm.
your entry this past year. Here, since we
Right.
were talking about the figure models, here's some of this. So, like you were
Oh yeah.
saying,
So that is a G
wow,
kit, and yeah, that's the resin bus we call it.
this one.
Yes.
Sorry, yeah,
So
skipping around a bit. There you go. The Android one. Yes.
yep.
Hmm.
Yeah, this one is pretty interesting because it was a gift from a friend actually. I think the original sculpt is from one of the Winterfest
Hmm.
um, uh, uh, release,
Hmm.
and the reason why I like it because first of all it's big. It's the scale 1/8, so I have lots of room to paint it.
Hmm.
The idea for this is to try to paint it as realistic as I possibly can,
Hmm.
and because it has a lot of skin surface, that there's a lot little tricks that you can do. You can
Hmm.
actually paint it the vein so they show through the skin.
Hmm.
You can brush up the face where you expect to see more blood vessels.
Hmm.
Um, so this was a very interesting experience for me, and it
Hmm.
came out really well.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
but
really well.
this is very Asian style stuff.
Mm, mm, yeah, for sure. Like certainly very Japanese GK
Hmm.
style,
Yep.
right? Uh, yeah, this one.
And that would be a little different approach with
Mm,
more Western style,
mm,
and the way and you like you said before, the lighting. is predetermined. So that would have the lighting coming from the top right going to the bottom left. So everything is painted accordingly, so that you would have created a shade on one end but not the other. That's typically what they do when it comes to figure painting, that you want to create some kind of drama, tension on your build, that you don't like to light everything evenly. You want to have some darker side to give you that tension on your outcome. And lucky enough, this were actually, it actually won the best in show in the first ever miniature competition that I entered. And yeah,
pretty amazing.
it's fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. Here we go. This one,
that would be okay. Yeah, one thing about me painting minis, because if you just get a sculpt and you just paint it as it is, then it's just a painted sculpt. So I personally, when I do any project, I try to do a little either Easter egg, or I have some kind of intention what I want to achieve. And for this one is I wanted, well, first of all, I want to learn how to do what they call NNM. NNM is non-metallic metal. So you try to paint something that looks like it's reflective like a metal surface without using metal paint. This is the first attempt. It doesn't come out perfectly, but this was my first attempt. At the same time, instead of painting it just like an astronaut, I go, okay, how do I make this a little unique? And I go, well, how about I do it in the C3PO theme? So this is actually painted trying to mimic how a C3PO would kind of looks like. And I actually wrote C3PO on the chest just in case people don't get it. Yeah, so you see a lot of my miniatures project, I would throw in a little Easter egg just so if people who can get it will get it kind of thing.
Yeah, and like you said, I love that you're like trying to do something a little bit creative with each one rather than just like modeling as it's supposed to be, right?
Exactly.
Just basically recreating whatever is on the photo on the box.
Yep.
Right. So like this one, obviously Evangelion themed here. This is
right.
what, 120 scale or something?
This is 135. This is tiny.
Oh, really?
This one is super small. And the whole goal for this project is I want to see how small I can paint, basically. So if you look at one of the back picture, there. Yeah, so that was an illustration of Evangelion I found online that I really loved that illustration. I thought that would look awesome on a leather jacket. So, and that's exactly how I painted it. Oh, this is how exactly it would look like if I actually have that on the leather jacket.
Yeah, that's tiny. How long did it take to just paint that on the back of the jacket?
Oh, I don't know. Let's put it this way. Ever since I decided I want to do hand painting, I've been painting every single day for the last 5 years or so. At 4 o'clock, I wake up every night at 4 o'clock and paint till 7-ish and then get ready to work. So I got a couple of hours in consistently almost every night for the last couple of years.
Like early morning, you mean? Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. That's pretty incredible. All right. These ones are again more like
military
European style.
Yep. Traditional military build. These are when I was exploring different material. These are done in oil paint. So instead of typically we use acrylic when it comes to hand painting, I want to try, but because the military model has always been done in oil paint, we use a lot of oil paint military models, and people who are good with military models will only use oil paint even when it comes to figure. So I just want to see what are they like, and that's why I did this too. What I didn't realize is oil paint actually took about 2 weeks for each layer to dry. So there's a lot of waiting in between. But the beauty of using oil paint is because they took so long to dry, you can have a perfect blend between color just by a little paintbrush, just dabbling until it looks perfect. And you will always get a nice smooth finish, given that you have the patience to wait for it to actually dry out in like every time you paint a layer, wait 2 weeks and then come back and go at it again.
I love the chameleon added onto this one. Is that like scratch build, or that's taken from a different?
Oh no, that's came with the build.
Oh,
the kit itself has the chameleon. Yep.
Okay. Yep. That's cool. But yeah, I mean that's the great thing about the wait time too, is that allows you to start other projects while you're waiting and have multiple things.
Oh yeah. ever since you if you dabble into hand painting, they focus even military painting. They focus on something that we as a Gunpla builder never really thought about. It's the
Mm,
texture on the material.
mm,
A lot of time when it comes to Gunpla, once we finish, we do either the standard semi-gloss. Now we always do a top coat that kind of tied everything together in the same finish. It makes sense for a gigantic robot, but when it
mm,
comes to something that's a lot smaller scale, then a leather jacket should look like a leather jacket, have the
mm.
reflectiveness,
Tiny, yeah.
and like your hair should be shiny, but your skin should be a little bit of a semi-gloss. It might almost even look moist. So,
Mm,
so they focus a lot in recreating those surface details so that you can feel the texture from the paint job.
mm,
Yeah, those are very cool stuff to learn. Might
mm,
not necessarily translate into Gunpla, but it's good to know.
mm. No, yeah, I mean, like, and not necessarily will it transfer onto like Gunpla, I guess doing it the correct way, right?
Hmm.
But again, like you can certainly be stylistic with it, Maybe not with like hair and skin finish with Gunpla. I don't know.
Yeah,
I've
but
seen
it
it a
will
little
come.
bit.
It will come in handy when it comes to diorama, though.
For sure.
Yeah,
A few more of these. This one, what's going on with this one?
that would be my first attempt in hand painting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's when I started exploring, and I was like, holy, this the person who sculpted the sculpt really thought about the person who's going to paint the sculpt. So
Mm,
he would put in material like the cloth, he would put in material like leather, he would put in the goggles, the visor that's reflective. So you get all kinds of different material in
mm,
what the same sculpt that you can play with. So they
mm,
actually allow you to have room to try to show off your skill as a painter. So you're not just painting the sculpt to praise the person who sculpted the sculpt, but you
mm,
as a painter will have something you can show as well. That's usually what I look for when I get a sculpt that I wanted to paint. Is I look for,
mm,
is there room for me to add my own interpretation to it?
mm,
And that translates well in Gunpla too, because when you do modifications, do you just mod it because I want it to look more detailed, I want it to look more
mm,
fancy, I want to try
mm,
to do it in a way that kind of shows, hey, this is my signature style kind of thing.
mm. Yeah. Um, this is another one.
That's a Les Mis, yep.
Yeah. I love this sculpt. I've seen this one around before. It's really nice.
Hmm.
Uh, I like the fact that you have the print. Is that just hand painted on there as well? Then on the
Yep,
t-shirt.
yep. It's
Mm,
freehand painted. Yeah.
mm.
Because I when I got the sculpt, I was like, oh wait, that really looks like the poster girl. So it'll
Yeah.
be cool if I have the real girl and then the poster girl on the shirt. That will be cool.
Yeah. That's super cool. This one, that's a machining Krieger.
Yeah,
Well,
that's a Marquade pilot,
mm,
and I don't know if people would notice. That was the intention anyway. I thought, what if I paint a Machine Krieger pilot into a Golf?
into a what?
A Golf.
Yeah. Okay, I got it. Right.
So
Mm,
Ramber's build. Yeah, I'd
mm,
always liked Ramber, and
mm,
I was like, okay, so if it's gonna be blue, then it's gonna have to be Ramber's blue, and then you have that little yellow section to
mm,
mimic the Ghost, and
right.
that's how this came about.
Nice. This is all
Yeah,
hand
that's just
painted.
another challenge that to see how small I can paint. This is actually, I think this is a gift from a friend that he brought it. He brought it back from the Shinjuku, the model show in Japan. Not
Mm.
Shinjuku, the place they had the Wonderfest. I forgot the name of that place.
Uh, it's Wonderfest or C3 is the other one?
I think it's Wonderfest.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, it
How
was
big is this? 1/35th scale as
this is
well.
145th. Yep, it's
Mm.
145th.
Wow. Yeah. For anybody that doesn't know, that's about like 2 inches, 2.5,
Yeah, pretty much. It's
maybe?
about two
Yeah,
inches tall. Yeah,
something like that.
yeah. And this is a tribute. I have been a gamer modeler my entire life, and one of the games
Mm.
that I love the most. I don't know if you know that. It's called Ultima Online. UO.
I know the name, but that's all I know. Yeah.
Ah, yeah. Ultima is an old school computer game, so
Mm.
people who are in my generation probably know what it is.
Mm.
And the very first MMORPG back in the days that has a graphical interface was Ultima Online,
Mm.
and this is a tribute to that game. And the emblem on the shield itself is actually the logo for the game.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
But the actual kit, the mold, is nothing
Mm-hmm.
related to the game. It's just
There's
a
nothing related.
right.
It's a plain regular medieval knight sculpt.
Mm-mm. And this one,
And
good.
this one, yeah, the girl's picking nails. It's a fun project for me because when I started getting serious into figure painting, one of the biggest problem that I cannot somehow I cannot get it right is that when it comes to painting figure, they use a huge contrast between the color just to have that kind of a nice and more vibrant presence. And
Mm.
my friend taught me like if you because he would basically take my paint job and turn it into black and white to show me that I don't have enough contrast between the darkest
Mm.
shade and the brightest spot on the figure. And he basically say, if you want to learn that, try painting in just black and white.
Mm.
And I go, okay, yeah, let's try that and see if I can get it done here. But like I said before, that I want to do I try to add a little Easter egg every time I do a build. And for this one, I don't know if you remember Schindler's List, the movie.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was that little girl in the Schindler's List, and she's the only thing that comes in pink in the entire movie.
Mm.
So if you see the little tag on her chest, that
Mm.
is a reference to the little pink dress girl from the movie.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, really nice. That's interesting. Yeah, a good way to check your contrast was by looking at it in black and white, but actually try painting in black and white too.
Oh, it's hard. You don't
Yeah,
notice
sure.
it when you actually try it. Like it doesn't look right until
Mm.
I have repainted it at least 10 times. Let's put it this way.
This one?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Top to bottom, washed it out, and then redo it completely 10 times minimum.
Wow. Yeah. And then do you mess with do you try to keep it as pure black and white as possible? Or, I mean, were you doing like warm tones, cool tones, something? Did you
Um,
intend on that or no?
I cannot use multiple tone when it comes to black and white. So the only thing I did, I add a tiny bit of yellow into the white so that it's not pure white.
Mm-hmm.
And I really rarely use 100% white. So it's always a grayish tone with a little bit of yellow on it. Because in real life, if you look at anything in real life, there really is not that many things that is a pure black or pure white.
Mm-hmm.
It don't really happen that often in real life. So people are used to seeing they interpret white as in something that is a near white, so it's not pure, right? If you
Right.
paint something with just a bright, like a bone white, it doesn't look right when you look at it. So,
Yeah.
so you have to keep that in mind when you paint.
All right. Where should we go next? We have a lot of cool stuff to look at here. I want to take a look at, we'll kind of maybe bounce back and forth a little bit. I want to take a look at some of this other mecha stuff here, which is very cool. We've got some stuff here, but it's all very interesting to hear about, kind of all of these different lessons that you're learning, from different techniques and different ways of hand painting, because I mean, so much of that went into your GBWC build, which we'll take a look at next as well. So I'm sure it was all like very helpful for that project as well, of course, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's like this one. This is basically my whole intention is to try to learn the other rhyme and model building and see if I can use it in Gunpla. This one is the opposite. I actually take what's already in Gunpla and try to show it to the miniature community, and people were impressed. Yeah, so this is the typical cell shading painting that we've seen quite a lot recently. And I've never tried it, so I go, okay, let's give it a shot. And then I brought it to miniatures competition, and apparently it was well loved. So yeah, this is the way I kind of like this way to paint it because it really sticks out.
Yeah,
it's the contrast is huge, and it really sticks out. It's almost like you're watching the Seder animation back in the days where they do a lot of cell shading back then. Everything looks shiny and reflective.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what I was just about to say. It's a really good choice of this technique for this particular model too. Like this model lends itself really well to this painting style, of course, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. When you try to paint gold, this is one of the preferred way to do it. instead of just actually painting chrome gold. And there's very few kits that will fit really well with the gold approach. One of them would be the ultimate the Hyaku in Cedar. The other one would be the Golden Knife from 5-Star Stories. There's a few of those kits that would be perfect. Like if you don't paint it in gold, you're not doing it justice. And this is one of those other ones.
Speaking of 5-Star Stories, we got one here as well. This one.
Yes. This is the Bendal. This is scale 1/100. It's a big one. I always love 5-Star Stories. I love the design, 100% for it. But it bothers me because the way that this was, how should I say it? This is an IMS kit from Vox. And the way that they designed the kit, when you actually build it, you realize, hey, wait a second. Like if I actually assemble and build this kit, it would actually make it impossible to go back to paint it. So I have to make a decision. So I went with, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to hand paint every single thing and just keep painting and assemble at the same time. Eventually, I'll get it all done. And it's also challenging because it's so big. It's 1/100. So how do I actually hand paint something at that size and it doesn't look too rough? So I decided to go with an approach that it's supposed to look rough. That the shading is not 100% smooth. You can see that randomness in it that I was always talking about. And the outcome is really nice. And I really loved it. And it's also something that I teach people with this kit, because a lot of people, when they try hand painting, one of the biggest challenge with using acrylic paint is because they're actually quite translucent. And when you want to paint it to avoid brushstrokes, because that's what 99% of people, when they start hand painting, they say, well, I can't do it because it will always leave the brushstroke that looks disgusting. Therefore, I have to use an airbrush. The reality is, if you're using acrylic paint, you're almost painting it to like a water consistency. So if you spill water on the floor, you don't see brushstrokes. The water level is solved automatically. So if you paint your paint like water consistency, technically you should never run into problem with brushstrokes. Unless you don't have the patience, you want the water saturation like in one pass, which is not going to happen. Because the way acrylic paint works, you kind of have to go like 5, 6, 7 layers before you actually see color that's built up slowly. So I use this as one of the examples that you can actually do what we always do in Gunpla. Yeah, I'm sure you know that Master Watanabe back in the days, they always promote pre-shading. That we will do the dark shades on the rind, on the outside, on the skirt, on the edges first, and then slowly push the lighter paint. You can do this same thing with hand painting acrylic. So I will basically rough in all the darker purple color first, and then use a lighter purple to layer and layer on top until I get to the consistency I want. Then I can stop. So it took a lot of time because it's so big. But on average, every single piece is approximately 10 to 20 layers of paint, and you don't feel that. You don't feel the thickness because the paint is so diluted. So this would be a perfect example to show people that you don't really need airbrush, which is nice to have, but you don't necessarily need it to be able to do a big build like this.
Yeah. I know that. I mean, like, everything I've ever heard about these kits, I've not built one yet, but anytime I ever hear anything about them, it's just talking about how challenging they are. And yeah, I mean, I think that's what you talked about. I think probably one of the biggest reasons is just if you're planning on painting, it's just very difficult to build in a way
if you can get it to stand, you have won already. That's the ultimate goal. If you can get it to stand up straight, then that's all that matters. Yeah, it makes you wonder why. Because what happened is this is an injection kit. Like 5-Star Stories, we always refer them to RES and G kit, and those are already challenging to build. But when it comes to injection kit, because they comes in 2-part and the joint are not like Bandai, they're not always perfect. It makes it even more challenging. And they always advertise IMS as there's joints in it. It's pulsable. But when you actually build it, yes, there's joint. But if you actually deviate or twist the joint to like a 2 degree to one side, the whole thing will just collapse.
Yeah.
So at the end, you end up with the fixed poles anyway. So
Mhm.
yeah, but
Yeah.
it was fun though. Like the design is beautiful when it comes to these kids.
No, for sure. Yeah, this painting style, and I mean, I love it because I've seen
Hmm.
so many different five-star stories kits, but a painting style like this is very unique on it. So I mean, it's really cool to see. It fits the design really well. It's kind of surprising,
Yeah.
you wouldn't see it very more often, but obviously, it's a difficult technique, so it is really, really impressive. Um, here, let's see. We've also got your
Oh,
Sahelanthropus
that's the
here.
yep, the one build that I can never pronounce.
Yeah, I know. Adam's the same way too. Whenever we're talking about Metal Gear kits, he's always like, and what's the
Yeah,
other one? I have to come in and help him. Sahelanthropus, yeah.
yeah, yeah. This one was done a while back. That's before I started hand painting.
Okay, yeah, yeah. I was gonna say
Yeah,
this
so
looks more like it's airbrushed, yeah.
it is. So this
Mhm,
one was when I was exploring weathering technique. So
mhm,
how do I? And this would be the perfect candidate for something like I don't want to build a tank, but I want something that's military that I
yeah.
can weather it properly, and then people will think, oh, that makes sense. No, it should be weathered like that, and
Mhm,
that's how it came about. One of the challenges of this build is the camouflage.
mhm,
Because
mhm,
for me, every time I do a build, I do a lot of research. I want to recreate the exact camouflage from the game itself. And what I find out because it's actually a texture mapping in the video game. So depending on which picture you look at, the camouflage is always different. So there
okay.
really is not the ultimate right answer that oh at this point it should be like this thing should be here, that should be there.
Mhm,
Then you kind of have to take the design and create your own that oh it looks like it should be there. It makes sense to be there. And that's
mhm,
how I end up have to do it at the end of the day. Because at first when I started, I thought I could just take a picture and then recreate exactly what's on the picture.
mhm.
And turns out it wasn't as easy as I thought.
So you were playing the game at the time?
Oh, I'm a huge gamer.
Yeah, yeah. It's difficult, and I know, like, even in the manual, it gives you the camo guide, but
Hmm.
it would be very difficult to try to match. I feel like
The,
you would
the,
have used it as, like, a
the,
rough guide.
yeah, it's a reference for the design pattern, but you cannot use it as is. Even
Mm,
the sculpt actually is a decal that came with the kit. It really doesn't fit the kit at all.
mm,
Like
yeah,
if you just try to apply the decal, it's just going to break apart left, right, and center.
mm,
And what happened is then you have to dabble and just to touch it up as you go.
mm,
And outcome is okay, but not perfect. But it's one of the build that I love as well.
mm. Is that what you did? Did you use the decal and then just, touch it
Yep,
up with
and I
paint
touch
where
it
it
up.
broke? Mhm,
That's right. Yeah,
interesting, yeah.
at some point, even as much as decal softener that you use, there is some
Mm,
spot that you just won't fit. And when
mm,
it comes to that, you kind of have to cut it. You just
mm.
have to cut it so that it fit, and then you touch it up wherever that's exposed.
It's really kind of almost better off, to just keep the decal on the decal sheet and just use it as a reference and just hand paint it, right?
If I had the skill I had now to hand paint, I would not even use that decal at all.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, for sure. It would be interesting to see recreate it or, revisit the Metal Gear kits
Hmm.
again, maybe not this exact one, maybe you wanna try one of the different ones now.
Which is one of the plan. I have a rest sitting at the back right now.
Okay, alright.
Yep.
Which kit is it?
That's the rest, the original Rex.
Oh, the Rex, okay, right.
Yep.
Yeah, it would be interesting because, after that, then you should do the Ray as well, because then that's like a totally different finish, being all, like, kind of shiny metallic,
Yeah,
right?
that's right. That would be more of an organic design. That would actually be better for hand painting. That would fit a bit more in that way. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
it'll
Ray would be cool.
give you an opportunity to have a different challenge for
Yeah,
each one, yeah.
yeah,
Um, and I think this is the
and
last one here for this
and
album. This is the
and
Max
speaking
Factor?
of, yeah, this is the Max one. And speaking of organic,
Mhm, mhm,
so when I did the bang, I was like, I really like this presentation,
mhm,
and what other kits can I use it on? And I
mm,
figure I want something that has half mecha, half organic.
mhm,
And when I saw this kit from Max Factory, I was like, okay, this is the perfect candidate.
mhm,
Turbine is the ultimate. Like when it comes to organic mecha, Turbine is the epiphany of that.
mhm,
Um, And the shield too. The shield is awesome because that
Mm,
was a specific design just for the Max Factory that release. So uh,
mm,
the Bandai kit is nice because they're pulsable, but then you don't get the same detail because this is
right.
original. This is originally a G kit back in the days, and they scan it, they 3D scan it, and then shrunk it and turn it into injection kit.
Mm. Yeah, that's one of the things that I've never built this kit, but like seeing the two, you mean you can just see that's the trade-off that you have. Like with Bandai, you have it, it's like a nice, very easy Bandai kit, but the nice thing about the Max Factory kit, I mean, the detail on it is really, really impressive.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. One thing you don't see from Bandai kits that you will never have anything that's 20. And with 5-star story and
Uh-huh.
Max Factory, you can cut your finger pretty easily with this kit.
Mm. Oh yeah, yeah. There's never going to be anything. You can
Yeah.
sharpen it, right? But it won't be like that out of the
Yep.
box.
Yep.
For sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the painting on this, I mean, like, I mean this in the best possible way, but like it almost looks gross in like how like I don't know, like organic it looks,
Yep. Yep.
But yeah, it's really cool. So all right, all of those adventures leading up to GBWC last
Oh yeah.
year.
Yep.
And I'll pull up the photos for us, and I mean, I guess you actually included some very useful photos to this as well about where it all started off. So with this one, this is one that you knew from the start. Okay, I'm gonna make this as a GBWC entry. I want to make this. How did it start off?
Well, this is how it all started. So after 2017, well, after 2018, because I did the Cycle Gundam in 2018, and after 2 years experience of GBWC, I thought to myself, like, if for us North American builder to have a chance, that's something that I don't see very often in GBWC is that to have a story element to it, right? And back then GBWC, they praised the craftsmanship, the design, the complexity of the build, especially the year in 2017. If you see the Hong Kong build, that's like basically a Michael Bay creation of Optimus Prime. So, so I try to do something different. Like, what can be different? I was like, okay, well, let's do a story. Why not? But one of the problem is, like, if you want to do a story shot, then you're looking at diorama, but then in the Gundam world, a lot of the famous scene has already been done. There is so many of them, but you have seen it all. Like, someone has done it already by now. It's 40 years it's been out. So you kind of have to find something that's kind of unique that you haven't really seen. And you have to dig into what doesn't have a kit yet. And then I thought, okay, yeah, this Toro has never got a kit release back then. Well, not until now. And that would be interesting to create. The reason why it's not a lot of people has even tried to create this is because of the dome, that glass dome on top. That's something that's kind of beyond what we can do as a model builder. Like, I cannot vacuum form to create a shape like that. Well, it's possible. It's hard. And then it just clicked one year at I think it was Christmas time when I was looking at the Christmas tree. I look at the ornaments on the tree, and I thought, wait, don't people buy the ornament, the empty ones, fill it in, and create their own ornament on the tree? And well, yeah, people do that. So I went and take a look and say, wait, the size
here? I should have one.
Yeah,
right there you go. Yeah.
Exactly. The size kind of match. This is possible. I mean, it's not going to be easy, but it's possible because there's no kit for me to reference on. But for me to be able to do a story, one of the key elements is that I need to have those two characters. And there was no characters available for those two. So the ultimate question is, like, can I even create the characters? So I start off that build different than everything else I've done before because I started off with an idea first that I already have a picture in mind that I want to present at the end. Then the question is, how do I make that a reality? Instead of, I have a kit, I want to make it better, I want to make it nice, I want to put in a story. Now it's the other way around. I already have the story, but how do I make the kit to actually make the story happen? So I've never sculpted before, and I don't think I can learn how to sculpt in such a short time anyway. So I look into what's available by Bandai, obviously, because of GBWC, it has to be Bandai. And I found these little pilots that they always give out in old school. Like I think these are all MG back in the days where they include the little 120 pilots.
Yeah.
And I thought, hey, this would be a perfect starting point. That the scale would be exactly at 120. That's how I want it to be, and I can just just cut them apart and get the shape and the movement I want. Turns out it wasn't as easy as I thought because they were actually in a soft plastic. So this thing are gummy, and they're impossible. They're impossible to sand to surface them. So the stuff that I want the skin to expose, it has to be as is because I cannot sand it down afterward. So as you can see, I cut up a lot of parts just to make it happen. At the end, I'd almost cover a majority of them with epoxy putty at the end of the day, except the face. And the hand is the most tricky of this because there isn't a hand that works for what I want to get at the end. So I kind of have to learn, because I have to learn how to basically sculpt them myself with epoxy putty. Mind you, epoxy putty is not the best medium when it comes to sculpting. You actually use sculpting clay for Pro Builder, which I don't have access to back in the days. So I kind of have to Google a lot to see how people actually create the fingers, the palm, and do like 10, 20 try until I get a pair that looks like kind of the one that I want. And that's how it came about. So this whole build actually started with the two figure first before I even touched the Gunpla. And I have to make sure that these two can be done before I can move forward to my project. But the good thing is I had no timeline for this, so it can take me as long as I want to make it happen. It just needs to happen at the end of the day. That's all. So yeah, so this is another figures that I use to create the girl. What can I say? It took a lot of effort.
Yeah,
a lot of try and error.
This one at least is hard plastic though, right? It's not that
Yeah, the clear one are hard plastic, so they're a little bit easier to work on. But the form, I mean, the proportion is not right. So I kind of have to blend her with Nana, and I have to create the dress myself. Because when I dig into creating two character, one thing that doesn't make a lot of sense, I have to make a choice back then. Like if the original scene is the girl is dropping from sky inside the colony, and if you actually watch the animation, there really is not a whole lot of wind. Like the girl's hair is perfect from the beginning to the end. That doesn't make any sense. So when I sculpted, it was dilemma. Like, should I do the flying hair, the crazy hair day, or should I keep it perfect? At the end of the day, and I figure I'm not great at sculpting. So for people to be able to tell that's her, I kind of have to keep the same hairstyle so that people can recognize her for what she is. And that's how it came about.
Yeah, it worked out. Like you said, that's how it is in the anime. So here's the ornament ball like you were talking about.
Yeah, I tried a lot of them.
Just to get the size just right?
Yeah, to have the cut, because it wasn't a half cut. Because if you look at the design, the ball on top is actually more than a half circle. So I actually have to cut a lot of them just to get the right line. And this, because of the plastic they use, I don't know what they call it. Is it polyron plastic or something? Normal glue won't even glue to it. So I have to use a specific glue to be able to glue it onto the framework I create later on. And they're not even sandable. So if I screw it up, if I do a little scratch here and there, then there's no way for me to buff it out. So I really stock up on them just to have the perfect cut at the end.
Wow. So was it something like that you kind of maybe used one to like get the fit and like build everything around it, and then like kept one which would be like your final one to just like put in at the very end?
Exactly. Yep. So I did two that they're almost identical, and I used the rough one that I already screwed up as my template, and then once everything's done, and then put the good one in. Yeah. So like I said, I do a lot of research. I have to look at the way they were designing the animation, try to have as much visual clue as I can that looks just like the animation, so people can clue in. Oh, so this is the same robot from Unicorn. I would say the research part took probably just as much time as I used to build it, actually.
Yeah, because I mean, for anybody who's seen the series, it's immediately recognizable. But I mean, you only see it very briefly in the anime. So I mean, like, for it to be, if you wanted to make it like exactly as accurate as possible, I mean, like, I wouldn't recognize it if it's accurate or not. But I mean, I know that you did spend, quite a lot of time to make it, as accurate as you could. But it is all just kit bashed with, well, a lot of kit bashing with parts from other different kits and everything, right?
Yes, I personally kept a bin with all the spare parts that I ever had collected,
Mm-hmm.
and I spent hours and hours just sitting, looking at the
Mm-hmm.
design, looking at the illustration, and try to find a part with the same curve, with the same design. And it's one of the purpose for this bill is when you see a lot of people kit bash, they go, okay, so I'll take arm from this guy, leg from that guy, use half of this guy, and then put them together, and that's my
Mm-hmm.
kit bash. The way I like to do my kit bash, I just want to reference them as a shape, not necessarily use things as it is.
Mm-hmm.
So I just needed the shape that looks right. It doesn't necessarily. I'm not using the head as a head. I'm using the leg as an arm. So I try not to have a predetermined mindset as though if I pick this up, oh, this has to be an arm or this has to be a leg. So I just put everything. I dump everything in the bin randomly. So I just try to scoop them up and try to find, oh, this curve works for me, or this line works for me, or this design is nice. I can take part, and that's how I come up with this whole build altogether.
Mm-hmm. Basically looking at each part as just a shape that you need,
Exactly.
ignoring what it was originally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I use as is probably the track, the belt at the bottom, the tank of the gun tank. That might be the only thing that, but I can't really get away with using something else for that.
Yeah, that would be pretty difficult. I mean, you could, but that would be a lot of work.
Yeah,
And then here they think this was sculpting the control sticks on the inside.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, so I think those are sculpted from just the frame itself. So it's just a lot of sanding until I get the shape I want.
Mm-hmm. And it's great that you were able to find reference images for a lot of this stuff too. It was
Oh
difficult
yeah,
to find those.
it's very difficult. There is very few reference
Mm-hmm.
for that particular magazine. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So which is good in a sense that I get to create my own interpretation for most of the stuff. Just keeping the visual clue that, oh, the chair has to look that way because that's how it is, and or the front panel has to have the shape. And I end up getting, I don't know if you remember the gadget point for the dome head. That's
Mm-hmm.
actually the front panel is actually the frame for the dome head, but it was extended to make it wider. So
Mm-hmm.
when I look at parts, I look at the shape and try to create the
Mm-hmm.
line that I want. It took a lot of time, but I mean that's the fun for Kitbashing, really.
Simon, are these Kotobukiya parts here?
It's possible, but it all comes from a bin.
Yeah.
Hey, don't
That's
forget, I asked Bandai, is
mm,
it okay to use details part from Kotobukiya detailing parts? And they said yes.
wow.
So
Okay.
they
Good
actually said yes.
information to know, because I mean
Yeah.
that's we talked about that, the interview with George. We talked a little bit about like his decal work and things
hmm
like that, and how he had kind of struggled with Bandai over that. Did
hmm
you have, I mean, I guess you've been, I don't know, lucky or not, anyway, fortunate to not have any of these issues with your builds over the years that
hmm
you've entered. But I guess for this build in particular, was that something you were keeping in mind, like decals, parts, anything that you used, were you trying to make sure that,
Right.
you were going to be safe from disqualification?
Yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
actually kind of sad, but that is a reality.
Mm-hmm.
That we, if you have an intention to enter GBWC, you kind of try. You have to do everything you can to avoid getting DKIL,
Mm-hmm.
and that's harder than we thought actually.
Mm-hmm.
Like 2022, who would have thought Ryan's build would actually got DKIL? And
Mm-hmm.
even up to now, we still don't know for exactly what reason. Is it because he used the wrong decal? Because the
Mm-hmm.
only thing he actually used was, I think he used High Kill, but that's a
Mm-hmm.
Japanese decal brand name. That's pretty popular and common. So
Mm-hmm.
why would there be a problem then? So
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, our conclusion is you can never predict what Bandai would
Mm-hmm.
really say at the end of the day. So for the best you can, try to not do anything that might be like
Mm-hmm.
on the borderline, And for me, I actually went beyond and over. Like, okay, you know what? Screw decal. I'll just draw everything myself, and I
Mm-hmm.
guess they can't possibly date me for that. But
Mm-hmm.
even then, you still worry, because what happens is once they decal you, they don't need to give you a reason.
Right.
So
Yeah.
if they do, and you would never know why you got decaled, and there is no system for you to actually say, well, you know what? Can I file
Mm-hmm.
a complaint about this? Like, can we relook at the reason why?
Mm-hmm.
There's no such system in place. They just say, well, you've been decalled. Thank you for joining, and I'll see you next year, right?
Yep.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's always in every builder's mind that when we build something for GBWC, I don't think that's a healthy thing to happen for
Mm-hmm.
GBWC, but that is the
Mm-hmm.
reality that we have to deal
Mm-hmm.
with right now.
Yeah, I think on the one hand, I think to your point, that's one of the reasons why they leave the rules a little bit vague, is
Hmm.
because it's just not feasible, like logistically, for them to say, like, if you have a complaint, or if you know whether like it's my build gets disqualified and I want to ask them to revisit it, or
Hmm.
maybe the winner, maybe it's not my build, but I know that the winner used some part that was not allowed or something like that, and I want to complain to Bandai about that. They just don't they're not going to revisit something,
Yeah,
once the decision is made. So leaving the rules a little bit vague, they can say, well, it fit within our rules and this was our selection for the winner. So,
true,
yeah.
true.
And then on the other hand, it's a difficult job for the judges. I mean, the judges have a lot to look at. They
Oh
can't
yeah,
spend hours examining every single detail of every build, right? I mean, they're going to
yeah,
judge it carefully, but there's a lot to look at. So understandable.
yeah. So at times when you don't find the shape you want, you can have to scratch build,
Mhm.
and then at the same time you have to wonder how much can you possibly scratch build without getting dekill. That's
Mhm.
always another question. Like, oh, you can only have 20% or 30% of scratch build.
Mm.
So yeah, I try to limit the scratch build element as much as you can,
Mhm.
and just stock it up. I mean, stack it up with the Bandai parts.
Yep. Yeah. I think that was when the one of the judges was talking about your work, right? I think he mentioned
Hmm.
something about how creatively you used a lot of the parts to be very unrecognizable, right?
Right,
I believe
right.
so. Mm.
Yeah, that is the purpose. That I want to use Bandai parts, but then it's not going to be easy for you to tell what it is.
Mm. Mm.
And and
Yeah.
yeah, it I think I actually got that done at the end.
Mm.
Because the funny thing is, Bandai was asking me exactly what did I use. Uh, because the funny thing is, when they display your build in the Gundam Base Tokyo, they
Mm.
have a little
Uh,
pack at the bottom that says
mm.
this is a build based on
Mhm.
this kid. So I gave them a 2 pages long list just in case I miss anything, and
Mhm.
they come back like, that's a lot of kids. Like, yeah, it is, because it's all coming from the same graveyard bin that I have. So
Mhm.
it's a combination of 100 kit, if you have to ask me. So
Mhm.
they asked me like, what is the major kit that you used
Mhm.
to build this? And I was like, that's a difficult question, because then if I use a not so relevant kit, they may not like that answer. So I
Mhm.
go, okay, which is the most expensive kit that I use? Do I tell them the Dendrobian or the Perfect Ray RX-78? And I end up telling them the Perfect Ray RX-78, and that's how they post it
Oh,
in
really?
Gundam Base Tokyo. And people are looking at it like, hey, that doesn't look like the RX-78. Like,
Yeah.
what the hell is actually used to actually make that happen? And I guess that's kind of interesting. Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah, it's kind of weird why they wouldn't just put like just various on there or
I
something,
know,
I
I
don't know.
know.
Okay. Uh, here's, I guess, this was probably your rough piece that you were using while you're working on the kit, right? For the clear part.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see what you mean now. How it's definitely much more than half. It's much more of a bubble than just a half
Yep.
circle, right? Yeah.
Yep.
And so if this was your rough one that did have like the imperfections,
That's
like
right.
the line and
Uh,
everything, and you said it was
yeah.
difficult, hard to sand.
You,
So for like the
you,
final one, did you have to
eh,
sand it a lot?
the line is still there, but the top I
Mm.
actually hide it with some
Mm.
sort of like an internal lighting system, a little
Mm.
dome light I would stick at the bottom, and then I have something covered at the top just to hide it. Yeah,
Okay.
the split the line on the side, there's nothing you can do. not with
Mm.
this medium, because I was looking in glass as well, but then I can't cut it, so there's no point for me to get a glass dome.
Here.
And the weight becomes an issue too. That'll be too heavy for the joint to hold it up. Because
Mm.
when I built this, I have this in mind that on top of having it on a diorama, I wanted to be also be able to display as a static piece just sitting on the ground
Mm.
without the
Mm.
pilot and everything. So I have
Mm.
to think about whether I should have the dome open or the dome closed. So I actually have to create the joint for me to actually make it happen. The
Mm.
challenging part is when you open the dome because of the backpack, it actually gets in the way. So the
Mm.
backpack actually has to move as the dome open up. So
Mm.
I kind of have to use a lot of like movable joint to actually recreate that mechanic.
Uh-huh. Oh yeah, right. Yeah. It would be. Otherwise the backpack would have to be set like farther back. But yeah.
Exactly.
Mm. Oh. Um, so kind of just skipping ahead to the final one there. There's a lot that we can talk about here and just like the work in progress that I feel like just kind of looking through all these, just really interesting to see, you know, it in detail, just the entire process. But I think that's one thing that I mean, and I will say this year kind of became particularly clear to me just how good the judges are at their job. I think because
Hmm.
in past years, you know, I've had doubts about like, oh, I mean, I don't know, you know, like what they were really looking for, thinking like in mind that they were looking for something in particular that they wanted
Hmm.
to be the winner. Whereas this one, I think that they really just kind of were just looking at just the modeling itself. I mean, because there's so much creative
Yeah.
modeling in this one, I think.
Yeah. I have to say, besides this year,
Mm.
the last couple of years, it always felt to us that there's always something
Mm.
they want for that year when it comes to
Yeah.
GBWC.
Hmm.
Either this year's I want a really, really clean build, or
Hmm.
this year I want a really, really sophisticated kit bashes, or
Mm.
this year I want something like to base on an SD kit. We always felt that they always have the hidden agenda, but they won't tell
Mm.
you.
Hmm.
So when you build for GWC, that's why I always tell them like the luck has a lot to do with it, because
Mm.
if you happen to hit that hidden agenda, obviously you
Yeah.
get a lot of extra points just because, right?
Yeah.
Uh, but then looking at what happened last year when Menton's built one, and I started to think, okay, so maybe a story, a diorama will actually work, and maybe
Mm.
that's what they're starting to look for this year, and luckily enough, that is the case.
Mm.
And that's actually what set me apart from the other build is that mine, if I'm not mistaken, mine is one of the few that you have a full story
Mm.
that built into the whole build. That when you look
Mm.
at it, you know something is happening.
Mm.
Some build is just really gorgeous as a display, but
Mm.
then that you don't get what's happening there, right?
Mm. That's true. Yeah. Yeah. Thinking back to the entries, and I don't remember each one in detail at the moment, but yeah,
Mhm.
as I remember, yeah, there was, you know, a couple of them that had like an action scene, right? But it's not
Mhm.
necessarily like, I mean, I think probably what helps your build a lot is actually having human, like visible humans in it, right? Obviously, as the viewers, we're going to connect so much more when we see people, like, right?
Yeah,
Rather,
yeah, and
was that something that you thought about as well, too?
yeah. Well, that's the same because it started with the story. So for
Mm.
this story to even work, I have to have the human element, and
Mm.
they played a really crucial part in telling that story. So
Mm.
that's why I started to build with the two characters first, because
Mm.
without them, this just won't work. It will just be a static piece.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Uh, so you already had the characters basically. I mean, I guess since you already had the plan for the entire build, you already had the characters
Mhm.
and the pose. Was it ever
Yes.
challenging at any point, like since you had the characters first and then you made the build, once you actually put them together, what were you
Mhm.
finding like it's not actually working together quite right?
Um, well,
Or
I
no?
do have to make a lot of adjustment
Mm.
because, well, the story has been established right from the beginning. But one of the biggest challenge for this build is then how do I recreate that feel that whole thing is happening in midair, right? So the
Mm.
diorama, the base, how to support the build becomes a challenge that I was not willing to work on it until the year I mean, the last year, because this build took 4 years, if I remember correctly.
Oh wow.
And I actually have to make it. I have the total finish long before I touch on the diorama and the base. So I
Mm.
always left it until the very end. And
Mm.
luckily, it actually came through at the end of the day. But then try to figure out how to post this so that you can feel that is sort of it's floating, it's happening in mid-air. It took a lot of trial and error. And one of the biggest things that I have to consider is if it's just aesthetically sitting on ground, that's one thing. To try to hold up the weight of this whole thing in midair with a rod or something is it's physically challenging. So I end up have to actually go buy myself some 2x4. So you see the rod in the middle that mimic the artificial sky. That's a 2x4. I actually have to shave it down to give it kind of like a trapezoid shape, and then border it up with power plate just to create that so that it will actually support the weight of the whole build, because that thing is pretty heavy. And the other thing we have to consider is the perspective. It's easy for us to create what we call the forced perspective, that we attract people to look at the build in a certain angle. But if you think about GBWC, because it's in a glass case that is 360-degree, where the judge will actually walk around the build just to see every single angle, you can't do that. But if you cannot do that, that means I also cannot use a predefined light source. So I have to make sure that there's something that's visible. There's some interesting spot from every single angle. So that has been one of the challenge for this build, especially when it comes to the diorama part. So I cannot use a forced perspective from any of the side. But then, okay, what about from top down? So that's how I came up with the city-based idea. So I would kind of force the perspective to look from top down if I create sort of like a colony city at the bottom at a different scale. So you kind of have the idea that, oh, there's a depth perception here. It's similar to what Tim did with his parachute guy.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of the same idea.
Similar, yeah.
Yep.
Here's just taking a look at some of the finished photos here, because actually we're just about out of time. I feel like there's a lot more that we could talk about with this. And then there's some of your other works here too that you sent. We have other photos we can take a look at. So we'll have to talk again more later. But just to take a look at some more of the finished photos here. I mean, I guess, and I love the little Canada logo in there as well. Very nice.
Yeah, that's a little touch. Like, I realized that for GBWC, you actually get more points if your build is somewhat related to your region.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, because if you look at the Thailand build, the Thailand is very interesting because the guy even dressed up just like his build.
Yeah, right.
He's got the matching shirt to go with it, and they always have those creative ideas. And if I'm a judge, I was like, okay, yeah, that's a cool idea. That would be extra point. Because if you look at the judging system, it's 30, 30, 30, right? So they're evenly distributed. You cannot really do very well on one category and screw it up royally on the other one. You will never go very far with that. So you kind of have you need to have a bit of everything.
Yeah. I mean, I love all the detail in here is fantastic as well. This is all hand painted?
Yep, everything 100% hand painted, the entire build.
Yeah. And so all the decals on the outside, the Canada logo too? This one on here?
There is nothing, there's no decals in this whole build. Everything from top to bottom is 100% hand painted.
Wow, yeah. It's pretty incredible. But yeah, one of the things that I, of course, want to talk to you about too is, of course, just the human element of the experience, right?
Yep.
What it was like with everybody there. So a couple of familiar faces here. We recently spoke with Jackie. I've talked a lot with Lincoln here on the channel. What was it like there just with everybody at the event?
Funny enough, most of us actually kind of know each other on Facebook already. Because there's only so many builder that does it so often that we kind of know everybody already. One thing that David does for us is every year he always create a checker for all the winners, and we can talk to each other before we even get on the flight. So that you'll be surprised. The information we get from Bandai are not really that accurate. I mean, not complete. Like, I would have builder message me asking, like, Simon, I just find out that we're supposed to leave our build at the venue after we finish the event. I go, yeah. It's usually get displayed for a couple of months and we'll get them next year. And the guy was like, well, so does that mean that I have to like create a box for them to ship it back to me, or they're gonna pack everything? Like, none of those was communicated to the winner at all. So if this is not your first time, then you might end up with a big surprise, like going there thinking you're gonna take the bill with you home after, and then no, this is staying. and then you'll be like scrambling. Okay, so how do I tell them what to do to pack it safely for it to come home in one piece, which is always a huge deal. Because I
Yeah.
learned that from the first year that I saw Riccardo from Italy, that he actually created a little brochure to teach them, like a 15 pages long brochure. I
Yeah.
was like, this is how I'm going to
Yep.
take it apart. This is how I'm going to box it and send it back to me. And
Mhm.
yeah, those are the stuff that they never told us. But because of David,
Mhm.
he did the checkup that we get to share those information. And it at the end, it helped a lot. So
Mm.
yeah, kudos to David. He's great.
And the experience that I had, I mean, when I went there with Tim that time for his GBWC entry, and I got to kind of just like tag along as a guest basically, and I made a few like videos from that experience too. I mean, like I tried to show as much of that, you know, for people to see as well, just because, you know, I'd heard about it from people. But yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that too. It's like even some of the people that end up winning, I mean, then like they win and they don't really know about like what the whole process is really like. So yeah, I tried to show a lot of that in those videos. That was 2019, right before COVID. But
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
it was.
that would be Nicholas here. Yeah.
Yes, yep. So Nick was there
Yep.
with us, so that was fun. But yeah, so like I said, we'll have to talk some more about probably this. I'm sure there's more that we can talk about and some other your
Sure.
works in a future episode. But yeah, it's been really great just to kind of take a look at through a whole bunch of your works here. And there's been a lot of, I think, really important points that you've brought up as far as like, you know, letting people know about like how to try different techniques, you know, and different ideas to keep in mind when it comes to painting and modeling and everything. But I guess, is there anything else that you would like to add that maybe, you know, motivational or inspirational for people if they're interested in maybe not necessarily GBWC, but just
Right.
modeling in general?
Well, I don't know. Well, a lot of people tell me that they want to try building, they want to get into this hobby, but they're
Mm-hmm.
too old, they're too busy. I have
Mm-hmm.
family, I have a kid. I just want to say that, you know what? I have family, I have kids, I have a full-time job. I still make it happen. So you're never too old for it. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
to a point that right now, because I've been painting for so long that I can't really see as well as I used to. I have to rely on magnifying glasses. You know, my hand's a little shaky, but you know, there are little tricks that we can help to, you know, to make sure that you can still build until you're like, I don't know, 70, 80 years old, you can still continue to build. If there's one takeaway, it's like that, don't be afraid. Don't think this is too difficult or too challenging.
Mm-hmm.
You won't know until you actually try it. And
Mm-hmm.
once you try it, you'll be hooked and you just keep doing it. You just need the patience for it and the dedication. Um, some people just give up before they even try, and you never get anywhere if you do
Mm-hmm.
that, right? So
Yeah, I mean, like if you mentioned that, I mean, like just taking a look at from your Zaku, which was like your first GBWC entry and win at that time. I mean, like that was a really good entry, I feel like. But I mean, like, then obviously going to like now, I mean, I think it can be very inspirational for people who maybe feel like, okay, I can make something that's, you know, pretty good or like to the best of my abilities now, but you know, it can't compete with something like this. I mean, like if you put your Zaku up against this build, I mean, like it's
right,
obvious, you know, which one's going to be better.
I
So,
know. And the thing is, like entering GBWC doesn't mean you have to win GBWC, right?
mm,
So,
mm,
so for me to get to this, I have tried multiple times. I've entered almost every year that they're available, and I find out what I did wrong, and then like, well, let's try not to do that on the next one, right? So until
mm,
you take the first step, and you will never know what's going to happen. A lot of
mm,
people say, well, I'm not good enough, or that mine would never compare to you guys. But that's not the point. Like
mm,
entering GBWC is just because you like building Gunpla and you want people to see your Gunpla, and that's all it is, right? If you get
mm,
anything out of it, great. But then if you don't, that experience is what that counts.
mm, mm.
Right?
And now that you won King Championship, are you going to now
I'm gonna
retire? Or are you
retire.
planning to keep planning
I'm gonna
to keep
retire.
entering?
No, no, no. Well, I may not enter like right away, I will continue to build, but then now I'm just doing stuff that I like because it's a different mentality. When you create something for a competition, there's all this limitation you have to stick to. When you just create something you just like, then you do whatever you want. That's a completely different mindset. Both of them are good because a lot of time creativity, like free for all, is not necessarily a good thing. With boundary of limitation, that's actually when you have to push your creativity. Like if you do video games, you know, Super Nintendo, the 8-bit game, the 16-bit game are usually the most fun games to play compared to all these fancy computer graphic games we have nowadays, right? So sometimes with limitation, it's actually a good thing for you to push your creativity. But when it's too stressful, when you're doing too long, then you kind of want a break, and that's fine. Take a break and then refresh and then come back at it when you feel like it, right?
Yeah. So you're saying that you might need a little bit of refreshing break.
Oh, absolutely.
For your next GBWC build.
Yeah.
Are you working on anything? I guess like have you already started working on something that it's going to be a future?
I did. I don't know if you know this kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is the Future Boy Conan, and I always had it in my stash. I never had a chance to build it, so I feel sorry for it. So I'm not going to just build it as it is. So I'm going to pimp it up. So yeah, I've got to give him a little 2.0 upgrade, and hopefully it turns out well.
Yeah, no, yeah, I saw your photo of that. It's a cool kit. All right, well, yeah. Where can people find your work if they want to see some more photos and follow you? You're on Twitter.
That's a good question. I don't remember my call sign. No. I think on Instagram, on Twitter, I go by chessymonkey, CHESSY monkey. That's a really, really Asian call sign I used when I was playing video games. That Ultima Online, back again. The server back then is called Shakespeare, and how I got that name. So on Facebook, I'm known as Simon Lam. So you can probably easily find me there. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, make sure you guys follow Simon's work. Always looking forward to seeing some more. And yeah, we'll have to talk some more in the future. I think probably we will have to do a group chat too. We can talk with a few of us together next week, or actually not next week, this week, later, Friday, I'll be talking with David. And then after that, I'm not sure, but yeah, there'll be some more interviews coming up. But I'm looking forward to talking some more in the future.
All right.
Simon, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
Thank you guys for hanging out. Those of you who are here live in the chat, thank you. If you're watching later, thanks for watching. And
all right. Keep building, guys.
Thank you.